Yeah. So greetings all away and present. We'll start by having the meeting in order. We'll go with a roll call. I guess in order. I'm here, Judy Olson.
Here, can you hear me?
Really well.
Great.
Johnson, Rich Fry.
Roger.
Yep. Todd Legacy, you're muted. Todd?
Here,
Right.
here,
And Mary Marshall
Here.
and Mike McKenzie here. So we'll start by standing and having flag salute in a moment of silence. And we've got, oh, it fell. Excuse me. We have a flag right there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then I like to continue the Ream of Lake tradition of having one moment of silence, just as she would say, to bring our best to the meeting. So. Well, thank you, everybody. I guess we'll just go down the agenda. Just a note for remote attendees. Shortly before, like a couple hours ago, there were a few small changes to the agenda. We'll call them out. A couple of them are really just spelling and very small things. There is one new item that we'll call out when we get to it. But they follow this format pretty close. So with that, we'd like to start with the open session for public comments. For those who are new, we do limit it to 3 minutes per ferry related topic per individual. Since we have no one in person, they won't go first. And if we really appreciate written copies of your comments, if you can submit them at some point. So
for the record of attendance, I can't read people who's picturing on the screen.
oh, so we've got on the top row, Rich Fry and Judy Olson. Then we've got, is it Lisa Corey?
Lane.
Lane Corey, okay. And David Parker and Mike Skihan and the committee camera and Todd Legacy. So does anyone have a comment they wish to make? I was thinking maybe Mike or Dave would. And okay, Lane?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lane Corey. I'm representing LIFAC's, the Public Doc Advisory Committee. And I just had 2 quick updates about community activities going on that I think will be of interest to LIFAC. One of them is on August 18th. The county Whatcom County Parks and Recreation Commission has its meetings different places, so it can be out in the community and get input directly from residents of different areas. And August 18th is our turn, Lummi Island's turn, to host a commission meeting. So they'll be coming to the Grange on August 18th for an open meeting. We'll have an opportunity, we hope, to give them a bit of a tour of the island before that. And so we thought that maybe members of LIFAC would enjoy joining LICA, we're hoping Heritage Trust, and some of the other organizations on the island, just to get a chance to meet in person with the commissioners. So putting that out there for you folks to discuss, and I have a planning meeting next Tuesday the 19th, and can get information to any of the LIFAC folks who want to attend, learn a little bit more about the meeting. So just a brief sort of public announcement about that.
Great, thank you.
And the other thing is people will be able to look for us at the Saturday market. We plan to be on July 23rd at the public market with LICA. And again, maybe a member of LIFAC would want to come hang out at the booth for a little while, because a lot of the public doc questions, of course, are related also to ferry questions. So just letting you know that, we'll give you more advance notice. We'll plan to also have a joint booth, at least one joint booth in August.
Oh, great. Okay.
Just handing out information, answering questions, we're really trying to extend the community outreach over the next couple of months, do some in-person workshops, and get more input and ideas about a public doc, people's opinions, and brainstorming.
Yes, and an added note, Bill Oak, so
Judy, do you want to, Lane, do you want to also talk about the anniversary party? I was going to mention it.
and it is, we also have a place on the agenda for it. So, but go ahead, Lane.
The anniversary party is not my gig.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So anyone else, Dave or Mike? I guess we don't have public comments there. All right. So moving on to minutes consent. They went out with the agenda.
Move we accept.
Was that a second? I didn't read it. Pretty brief. Well, okay, do we have consent on that here in the room?
Yes, I did read it.
Yes, and Rich and Judy?
I'm sorry, I missed what the topic of consent was.
Minutes from
Oh.
May 11th.
Approving, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And Todd Lagasty's a yes.
Yes, Todd, sorry, I glossed over that. Okay, then moving into committee activity items. Mike, were you going to run through these?
Yes. First, county council is taking over payment of the grain rental. Thank you to Todd and everybody who supported that in the county. Second, Jill Nixon and the county's IT staff have taken over administration of our email accounts. So far, they can A, distribute official public notices, meeting announcements, agenda minutes, etc. B, they can offer sign up for citizens to receive all notices. And C, they're still working on an arrangement for LIFAC members to be able to send internal group emails, which of course remain public record, but they would just be among us. What am I missing? Oh, we're skipping it. So I got myself confused here. Yeah, numerous items. I'm skipping to number 4. Numerous items, action items lie ahead in the continued collaboration with the county support both administrative and staff. And the times and places that need attention, some of them have been delayed by or postponed by time constraints of the staff and shortages of the staff. One is an annual budget and performance review, which I saw had been scheduled for tonight at the Civic Center, and it had to be.
That was a
postponed.
proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And training, Jill Nixon wants to give us training, us being LIFAC, on the usage of the new email functions.
Once all the bugs are worked out.
Yes. One was a report, a presentation by Public Works on the history and the current state of the ferry lease. So hold that thought. We've got a nice, basically a surprise today.
Well, but so far, I don't see Roland logged on or Rich Hudson logged on. Roland emailed that he was intended to attend by Zoom, and he has a presentation put together. He'll just touch highlights, but I don't see him logged on yet, so
Well, fingers crossed.
yeah.
That leaves, at some point, I'll report a presentation on contingencies for operations when flooding occurs. And the last one is Zoom operation for remote participation in LIFAC public meetings. Now, we have an appointment last night by the county council of a new committee member, and they have selected Mary Marshall to fill the vacancy created by Reed Johnson, who moved out of the LIFAC jurisdiction. And we're gracious that you attended tonight, grateful that you attended tonight, Mary.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Mary.
Yeah. And would just like to ask if you'd like to say anything, give some of your background. A lot of people read your application.
Sure. Well, just real briefly, I bought a place here in 2018, but I've been full-time now for a little over 2 years. I live up in the Sunset Edition of Isle Air, and I'm a business consultant and executive coach. So all my clients are remote. Well, not totally. So I do go into Seattle and other places occasionally. But I've been doing the same work, working with businesses, helping with businesses for 20-some years now. And I'm really interested and grateful to be on the council because I wanted to do something on the island to help. And it seemed like this was an appropriate area because it's so vital to the island and to the residents of the island. So just hope to contribute however I can.
Well, welcome, and it's really
Yeah.
great.
Welcome, Mary. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
It's a celebration song.
Okay. Well, and so with that, we do need to nominate and elect a new committee secretary, which reads absence. And
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Mary, if you're gracious enough to accept. Let's see, created by John Reed, who was our incumbent secretary.
Before I say yes, what are the duties? Do I take notes?
Minutes, yeah.
Minutes.
And so this is a surprise to you, or?
Yeah. Did not know that.
Well, then, so I guess I would say just off the top of my head, the main thing is minutes. We try to circulate, as you saw tonight, with the previous meetings minutes. We missed June, so that's why the May minutes. We put them out with the agenda and the official announcement. After this meeting, like tomorrow, that then if they're, assuming they're approved, they get posted on the county website, on the ferry committee website. But we wait until they're approved, so there's a little bit of a delay there. But there may be some development opportunities too. Reed kind of handled a few extra things. He produced a brief thing for the tone. He originally worked out the agreement that has now been taken over with the Grange and LICA. So now that's not something that has to be done. But I think there, you know, communications and records, we can grow in that area probably.
And Mary, as far as mechanically, so we'll have a recording after each meeting, pretty much the next day. And you can go back and figure out what details you might have missed, you know, as part of the conversation. And so I think that that's helpful.
Oh,
You
very
know,
helpful.
only in the case of full failure, you know, something didn't get recorded and we lost it all.
Mhm.
So that may be the only reason to sketch down a few notes, but
That also appears on a YouTube channel and you can link to it in the minutes. Yeah. Let's take the time. I'd also give you a sigh of relief tonight. I agreed to I agreed to handle tonight.
That's a good thing.
Minutes, and I'm also making a vow that they will be shorter than War and Peace.
and not to even, I think you might have overwhelmed her.
Well-
But I also was going to suggest, so I've been participating very strongly on the LIFAC committee now and
Yes.
helping them with the website. I was also going to volunteer that as far as some of this communication outreach, I could actually help Mary or whoever on the
Yeah.
team. You
And
know,
I just
Make
meant
some
to
of that.
identify it as a development opportunity. We've been talking for a bit about
Sure.
that stuff.
Sure.
Okay,
Um,
so with the proviso of your help and not taking notes this evening, yes, is it fulfilling a term that was shortened, or is it a new?
We lost a
3 years?
member, so it's,
You're filling a term, I believe.
Yeah,
yeah, you're filling the vacancy of Reed's term. I can't, it's a 3-year, so it's the balance of it's like 2.5.
okay.
But do we have a second for that nomination? Sure. Okay, well, then let's have a roll call vote in the room. Aye. And that's an aye from Rich.
And Judy's and I, sorry, Mary.
And
I'll
Todd,
make you pay later, Judy.
and Todd,
Aye.
okay, the ayes have it, it's unanimous. Great, thank you, Mary, that's,
Sure.
it's a really good deal.
Okay.
Oh, let's see, okay, so now comes the big blank. We're through committee activity items. I had communication with Roland today, and I didn't have any direct communication with Rich, but I'm surprised he hasn't dialed in. So I think we'll just have to plow ahead and see if we get any more attendance. I will say, so the addition to the agenda that you folks have remotely is that Roland has produced a document of the history of the Gooseberry Terminal from the beginning, from like 100 years ago. It's very detailed. There's a lot of history there. We had asked for that presentation, but hadn't gotten the date nailed down. So he let me know that he had it together and he sent the document. I have a few copies here. I added it to the reports and presentation. And I'm not sure what happened there. And I'm not sure what happened I was hoping for the ferry operations report. Everybody's pretty eager to hear about the dockside maintenance. And so unless we have them dial in, I guess we just need to move on to the last item on the reports and presentations. And we've identified that as, it's really meant more as a discussion about handling presentations, handling design concerns. We've had a number of them expressed. Mike, citizen Mike Skihan, and Rich Fry, board member Jim Dickinson, have all had issues and concerns they've wanted identified and wanted time spent on. And so I guess that's my quick recap. Judy or Mike, I'm wondering if you are able to expand a little bit.
Go.
Well, I guess that the expansion of the topic is to figure out a mechanism for the appropriate way of dealing with the concerns that have been brought forth. Essentially, we have a boat design that was delivered to us several years ago from KPFF. And we have since then had concerns raised by some folks that you mentioned, Chris. And the question on the table, I think, is what do we do with the concerns? That's really the question. And I don't know, Mike, if you can elaborate on that, but and it's really unfortunate that Roland and Rich aren't here to help with this question.
Yeah. Could I add one comment before you, Mike? It's just, it's important for people who haven't participated in the committee for a while to know a couple of things. First of all, this committee made a recommendation based on the conceptual design delivered by the consulting firm KPFF to Public Works. They performed a consulting work on a contract with Whatcom County Public Works. They identified a conceptual design. We spent a great deal of time and effort. There are lots of community participation in meetings, but also special events, community events at the school. There was an extensive survey done. And so all of that fed into that final result of the conceptual design. If I have some of my history right, in 2018, the county council, the LIFAC recommended, gave their recommendation and endorsement to that design. The county council adopted that as a resolution. I won't be able to cite it, but it's there. As a side note, all of this information is available on the county website, and I point people to the raised grant application, which details extensive history and documentation and work by many, many people. So that conceptual design was adopted by the council, and Public Works, that enabled Public Works to move forward even further than they had done in the past with a raised grant application. It's the third time Public Works has applied for a grant. It's a substantial grant, and we're supposed to hear results about this application later this year. At any rate, the point is that was the conceptual design adopted by council resolution, and subsequent to that, I believe it was last year or January. I'm sorry, I don't recall it off the top of my head. It was in my gap year. And so this committee also made a recommendation to essentially assure that the new vessel would operate with electrification propulsion. And that too was adopted by council resolution. For those who haven't been tracking this for a while, that was a very significant development from the original conceptual design, which had the electrification off in later years. So it's just important that people know that these things were adopted by council, and Public Works is working to get funds to build the vessel. I'm sorry how long-winded that was, but it's a lot of work by a lot of people.
You covered the significant basis. I think the only thought I have, and I'm going to preface my thoughts about the presentation part of it by saying this. I'm 100% open to and welcome ideas, 100%. I want to learn, I want to hear, and I want to weigh. Okay, so I don't have a fixed opinion about anything that anybody else has sent in additional to or questioning the accepted design. Second, I'm not an engineer, so it's not a good use of my time, and my belief is it's not a good use of committee's time to be spending time on details about engineering and all of that stuff. Our commitment right now is to get money, because everything you're bringing to the table is moot if we don't get money to get a ferry. It just it has no meaning until we get a ferry.
Jim?
Okay, now, my first experience with this was before I was on the board, where the consultants wanted to go to a completely hybrid ferry. And I said, wait a minute, that is not going to work. It's going to cost too much in fuel and losses and battery losses and motor losses and everything else. And then finally, a local organization here, an All-American Marine, came in and said, you're absolutely right. This is not a good thing. And so then we went back, by that time I was on the board, we went back and took the diesel hybrid approach, what to run diesel and whatever else. Well, since that time, I don't think it was the design, and I asked and asked and asked till I was blue in the face, please get somebody up here to explain this design to us so we can ask questions. Never happened. We had a number of things in the county. No, we're not going to change the design. No, we're not going to get expandable. No, we're not going to do all this and other things. And I started investigating and doing my thing. My engineering, and came up with some horrifying figures on fuel use. And especially when we got the ones from Texas state ferries, which are slightly smaller but very similar hulls. And it was like I came up with, right now, the Washington chief on the published schedule, this is historical, goes clear back to Frank A. Barton, which is like 10, 15 years ago, burns 142 gallons a day average. Probably some more in the summertime, but not significant. I came out by using the specifications from Elliott Bay Design that this boat was going to burn 356 gallons a day. And the reason is because of the hull design. The Whatcom chief is a Spalding hull design. Spalding was the designer of it. He had a specific type of format that he used in the state ferries are full of them. And the old Hayu, which was the one we tried, that number of us tried to get bought, the state surplus boat, we went through the used fuel use system, came up to 140 a day. And I went through by using the same efficient specifications, came out between 150 and 155 gallons a day on a strictly diesel boat. And the hybrid, unfortunately, as it is right now, there is no there is no extra power to plug it into. And so everything it runs will come off those diesel engines. And so you're going to be looking, not only is the hull design not efficient, this design is more like a shovel. It's got a tremendous, what drives the design of the hull, the efficiency is the lowest number of points that break the water and the nicest flow along it, along with the large, with good propulsion system. And this doesn't qualify. It's got a big flat shovel nose that's breaking the water like a barge. That's why it's going to burn so much fuel. And I
So,
think-
hey, Jim,
Yeah,
okay, this is exactly what we're trying to get at is that there are folks that have concerns about the design. We as a committee, and not to be disrespectful in any way whatsoever, you know what you're talking about. I think that it's not this committee's place to decide if the concerns that you're bringing are concerns that we as a committee need to bring back to Public Works. What we're trying to get at here is what is our roadmap for making sure that these concerns are addressed?
I agree with that.
Right. So who has ideas? And it's really unfortunate that Roland isn't here because, as Chris has stated, there is a ferry design that has been brought to the Public Works and that has been sent through to the council, and that is what is slated right now to be designed. So the question on the table is not, no, I don't think it's the committee's place to slice and dice the concerns specifically about what you're bringing. It's a matter of what do we do about the concerns. We as a committee, we want to make sure that they're addressed, but we don't know how to make sure that they are addressed.
Could I just
Just
go ahead?
Judy just know what I was trying to say earlier, which is that everything you've said is something to take forward to Public Works. It's not a LIFAC issue.
Well,
I think it is.
well, and if I can interrupt, please. I just wanted to Jim's credit. So actually, Jim has some really serious points. He and I met with Public Works in what, April?
I think it was, yes.
And we met with Liz Cosa, who's got a lot of qualifications, and Rich Hudson. And it was at least an opportunity for Jim to go through his list of concerns. And what he just mentioned, the hull design and how it could slap the water and cause fuel issues. Well, they didn't agree with or accept all of Jim's expressed concerns. There were at least 2 or 3, including this one, that they acknowledged and said, that's a really valuable point. We need to put some detail, particularly functional detail, about how would Public Works measure, give a standard for what Jim was talking about in the function of the ferry, and how could it be expressed in engineering terms. And so I don't claim to, I think that, Jim, you still have real concerns that you want to talk about, but they took those seriously. They agreed that there is a period of time between now and something like 2 years, 2 years before the boat is to be delivered, which is at the December 31 of 2026. And so they're open to receiving specific refinement improvements to the ferry design. And they told us, we just they kind of said, Jim, help us put this into terms that will go in an RFP, the design build RFP. Now, there are other things, for example, the vessel size, the lane configuration, and some other things that may very well belong in the same place. So I want to bring that up because it's not like everybody gets, or any one particular person gets everything they want, but there is openness on the Public Works side to take this seriously.
Well, I believe there's openness on this side too, but you have just, in that whole presentation, and what you said, Jim, underscores what Judy's saying, what I'm saying is that's the process by which she used the term I like, the roadmap. That's the roadmap. There's a way to present these things to the county, but not here.
Well, it has to be done somewhere, because otherwise now, if the status quo continues going, we're going to end up with something that's not very efficient. And also it's not going to be very, I can't say not reliable, but it's going to go through its engines very
Yeah,
quick.
I have no quarrel with that contention. What I have a quarrel with is county council and Public Works, by way of county council approval, has committed to and remains committed to something this committee recommended to them, and now we're trying to gather synergy around finding a way to build it, however it winds up being built.
Well, what I'm saying is that I don't think we were very well informed on the final thing.
So I understand your point, and I sort of hear the conversation, and I'm sorry that I'm not fully informed on this whole thing. I did read everything on the website that I could find to get informed, but we're talking about two separate things here. You have a specific issue with the design of the boat, which I completely understand. However, Judy's talking about process.
Well,
And the process that's been defined, because the decision's already been made, is my understanding.
well,
The decision's been made.
if the decision's been made, then we're in for it.
Well, but it.
But the
it-
thing is, I don't want that to happen.
It's not, who's we?
The people who get out the money and pay every time they go across, that's who's gonna be in for this thing. It's gonna cost a lot to maintain. It's gonna burn a heck of a lot of fuel. And
Jim, you're reverting back to details, and thank you, Mary, for pointing it out, but you're right, it's about process now. And Rich Fry had his hand up. Rich, there's a button for that. There's a button for that.
Let me there's many ways to skin a cat. There's different ways of doing things. What I think came up was from the designers an easy out. They took a boat they already had designed, applied it to made some modifications and handed it to us, rather than start over like we should.
I'd like to, Rich, you had your hand up.
I do. So the first question is, so on my screen here, what's the mechanism for letting you know I want to ask a question?
If you hover over the bottom of the Zoom call, there's a thing called reactions, and then within that there is a raise hand, but it only works if folks in the meeting are paying attention, and I'm not sure that they are. So
okay,
that's where that is.
Okay.
And
So
I confess that I paid attention.
so do I get to talk now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to recover bases that we've covered before, but as you know, I have major issues with the way this whole project has gone, and part of that is that we can, as you all pointed out, we can get bogged down in various details about this particular vessel. And I think the issue that I've been skirting around for the last 4 years is that it's not about hull design, it's not about size, it's not about any of these other things. It's about what vessel provides the greatest net benefits to our community and to the county. And that involves all kinds of things, including fuel costs, waiting times, energy use, carbon footprints, and a range of other details that all add up to the benefit side of the ledger for the users and the community and the cost side. So
Rich,
that conversation is not
Rich,
going to
just
go
so you
away
know,
by having us talk about it. What?
you're breaking up a little bit, just so you know.
Can you, what are you saying? Judy?
You are breaking up
Oh.
some, just so you know.
Okay, testing. Can you hear me?
You're coming through, but there are gaps. So just be aware.
Okay, so I'm noticing as I'm watching the screen of the committee, who are the only moving targets I see here, that we are losing some moments, but it does kind of catch up. Anyway, I propose that I've been thinking about this for a while, that I think it may be time to reach out to the community with another survey, specifically asking them about this range of performance measures that we're all discussing and can't seem to agree on. In addition, you all know that I feel that we were very much shortchanged by the consultants by the extremely limited number of votes that they considered as possible replacements. All of those things, I think, can be broken down into characteristics and service characteristics, as well as cost characteristics that people on the island may have an opinion about. So rather than argue about all this, I'm just proposing and see how everybody feels about if I put a survey together and launch it to the island community.
So the question I would have about that, Rich, is if we did that, then what? Then where does it go? And is the Public Works Department or is Whatcom County going to even pay attention to it?
Well,
Yeah.
especially having spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on
That's my
it.
point.
Right. So what I'm kind of hearing here is that they're almost parallel issues. So years ago, however many years ago it was, a few things were done by the consultants, the what's their whatever their acronym is.
Well, LIFAC Design was a built design.
Well, that was the boat design, but then the consultant committee that did the level of service work that was all done and completed and presented at various community meetings. And what I'm hearing is that at this point in our long and winding road to getting this new ferry built, that we're having doubts about both things, about a ferry design and about the proposed level of service that we paid good money for having done. I agree with Mary. If we do, sure, we could do a survey, but what do we do with that? What I'm kind of hearing is, I'm hearing that there are some people that would like both the ferry design and the level of service reviewed. It has been several years. Maybe we request that we pull the files out, review them, look at current data, and see if there's any recommendations for any changes. And also to find out if there's budget money to do that. If there's money in the budget to do that. Mike Skihan has a high five. He's using the symbols.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think that we need Public Works input on this discussion. And we're missing that tonight.
Okay, and Mike Skihan had his hand raised, so I'd like to go to Mike and then Bill had his hand raised.
Thank you very much, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Very good. Very briefly, I know your time is limited. I want to make a couple of points. I agree with Judy that the current plan needs to be at least reviewed and add one component to that, which is cost. Those cost estimates were done about 4 or 5 years ago. And I can tell you as project manager of the community center, costs are 50% higher kind of across the board. So you have money in for a grant and you may not have enough. You may have to rethink how you're going to finance that. And the second point deals with the grant itself. That will be announced on August 12th. In the past 12 years of the Tiger and Raise and Build grants, there were 768 grants for 8.5 billion. That works out to about 64 awards per year. And there are 50 states for 64 awards. You do the math, it's highly competitive. Looking back over the thousands of grants that were written and the 768 that were actually funded, you stand about a 1 in 10 chance just mathematically of getting the grant. So that's my second point. And I'd like committee members to at least consider after August 12th, what is Plan B and what will that cost? Thank you very much.
Yes, and Bill, you had a comment, and I think we have room for that.
I do, and I guess I'm coming at it from the public community. As I read off the website, the purpose of this committee is to provide review and recommendations to the county council on the issues. Would it not be an action item for y'all that says, you know, based on that you do a formal recommendation to the council that says this needs review, or there are questions and efficiency questions? I mean, you know, as far as a path forward, I understand trying to figure out how to go forward, but you guys, I mean, I'm hoping as a community member that y'all are watching all this and then making the recommendations to the folks that are deciding things. And that's the council who then can direct the public works.
Right.
And other, I mean, there's a lot of political side of everything you're talking about here. So that's my point.
Okay, and I'm going to respond to that. And some of this it's long history. You folks, many of you folks know it better than me. But Bill, but you don't. And so the overarching thing, this is just my viewpoint. There's 4.5 years until the vessel is supposed to be delivered, according to a county council resolution. It takes about 2 years to build a boat. So that leaves 2.5 years to do whatever. All I have to say is if a recommendation like what you have suggested, Bill, is made by this committee, that essentially says we want to do over and we need professional involvement and expense to accomplish that. I don't know about the rest of you, and maybe you're I don't have any political connections or anything, but that's a big lift. And secondly, for the deeper history, I wasn't aware of it at the time, although I was a Whatcom County citizen, but I've been out to Lummi Island and didn't, I wasn't paying attention to this stuff. And so in the early 2000s, the county had earmarked money for a replacement vessel. it was something on the order of the size of the vessel in this grant application. It was a big vessel. Public Works they used to have a model of it in one of their meeting rooms. They had the earmark, they had the funds to pay for it. When it came time for county council to resolve to move ahead with it, a group of islanders showed up at the council meeting, and they had different things to say about it. Some liked it, some didn't. They weren't singing from the same piece of music. And the council decided not to build a new vessel. So whatever is done, it's really important to keep that history in mind, because here we are, something like 15 years later, 16 years later, and it's taken that long. So if we want to ask for a redo, you know, that's not a foregone conclusion at all. And now I think that the Plan B question is another big question. And so council has committed to getting a replacement vessel. They know they have to do it. Public Works has to get the money to do that. They're working on it. If this doesn't turn out, that's my question, is what's the plan B there? But it doesn't relieve them of the obligation and responsibility. They have to keep working on it. And so that's council authorized work that is not LIFAC work. We can support and amplify, but so that's my little soapbox speech about that. And then following that is just a suggestion about, I think, what Judy had to say and Mary had to say about having a channel for serious concerns that can, it doesn't take another consultant, it doesn't take a request for a redo to say, we think these are refinements that would build a better vessel. And Liz Kosa and Rich Hudson told the two of us that if we can get that into functional terms, we can get it in the design build RFP. That doesn't cost another consultant. That doesn't tell council, oh, we want something different. It works with what is there. And then that gives LIFAC the next 4.5 years to work on stuff that only LIFAC and island community can do. And I'm just, here's a list of things that Public Works wants help from this committee on, and they go from the simple to the complex. They include all of the livery, the colors, the paint schemes for the outside of the vessel, for the passenger space. They include the vessel naming it. They include any other artwork that can be involved. They need help with that, and that's not stuff they can do. There's a whole suite of fare issues that really need addressing. These include what if more fares are collected than the 55% fare box recovery? I don't know what the odds are of that. Fare simplification, fare automation and collection, those are really big deals. And some of us have been through some fair discussions and, well, some of us have scars from that. And in addition, they would like to see help or support for studying the loading and offloading sequence, not just, is it 1 lane or 2 lanes? Mike and Rich have spoken of 2-lane loading that could be a lot better. But it also includes, so how do you sequence disabled people, walk-ons, bikes, oversized trucks, etc. They don't have a code of conduct for passengers. They, in a new vessel. And you know, even just the sailing schedule. And all of those things need to be done regardless of the vessel, regardless of the size, regardless of the whole design. And, you know, that's, I mean, to me, that just seems like it all falls in the lap of LIFAC so strongly. And there's so much good work to be done. So I apologize, I wasn't planning that. But I just think we have a lot of different levels of experience and years of experience with this. And maybe at least that can give us some references.
If I could just say a couple things. So Chris, I really appreciate the history about what had happened before when it was approved, because I have done a lot of work with government and for government and lobbied a lot for different things. And when you tube a deal like that has been put, they have long memories, very long memories. And so, you know, if we were to do a do-over, we're not going to have a boat for another 15 or 20 years. And so the things that we can affect this list, absolutely. And I completely agree that we should absolutely try to influence as much as humanly possible the design where appropriate. And that means making best friends with these people at Public Works so that we have a voice and that we can put recommendations in whatever format that they're going to listen to that would be involved in making it better. Because I do know with a lot of these public work projects, once funded and then in the design phase, they do often shift because technology changes so quickly, and that we're able to, you know, bring a better idea to the table. But in order to do that, we have to partner with them.
Well,
We can't
yeah.
antagonize them because we're just little fish.
Well, and we've been working with them.
Yeah, that's so salient because, and I don't remember who was here and who wasn't, Chris, because time gets blurred. But I know that organization that preceded and led to LIFAC on the committee, and plus I know Jim served on a ferry task force. And what it was, another piece of history for those of you who are new and some of you, if you don't remember, a big piece of history was we had councilmen standing up in public meetings saying, I'm sick of the island's entitlement attitude, and I wish you'd take this thing to the state. We don't even want to deal with it. The other thing was the conflict between, okay, the county was enmeshed in great detail with negotiating with the tribe, and we were sitting here with no voice at all. And the county didn't want to hear our voice. County council didn't, the head of public works didn't, etc. So that history is so vital. We worked 6 years on government relations. That was the number one priority, was getting what you just talked about, and we have that.
Right.
We have that with public relations, I mean, with public works. We have it with the council. We have it with the executive of the county. And it's vital that we continue that. And getting into, again, it's what I'm coming back to is the process, and you have continued to underscore exactly how the process can be successful. I applaud what you did, Jim, when you went and met with Public Works. I would laud it if Rich did that, if Michael did that, whoever did that. I'm more concerned about, and I'm glad you brought up that list. I want the process that's making the best use of our time in these meetings going forward and how we can. When I first moved here, this is a whimsical, but I had 3 or 4 people tell me that the definition of loving island was an argument surrounded by water. I've come to learn that that's very, very real, and that's okay. Not just, consensus is great, and different folks with different strokes is great. I'm concerned about the process. Bill mentioned it. We've talked about it here, and I want to, and Judy made the point very well, but we want to see what's the most effective process for us in dealing with who we're responsible to, which is the county council, period. And what's best for county is absolutely going to be best for us.
Well,
That's the way they'll see it. Go ahead.
I just like to build on what Mike and Mary said, because making friends with these people I mean, I think Rayma put in a lot of time with that. So did Charles Bailey. I've been trying to work on that, but I'm just gonna say, and this is out on the limb, everybody's got their baggage and history about this, but I've never seen a more friendly and committed and competent group of people, whether it's the executive office, whether it's county council or public works. Roland, Liz, and Rich are really enthusiastic. They like working with this committee. They're asking for our help, and they're also asking, how can we help you? And they told Jim they can take in some of what he's talking about. I don't see why they can't with some of Rich and Mike's points, maybe not everything. But I think it's a good situation.
I completely agree. And so I think where you could leverage that, Chris, is then since they were open to taking that in, ask them what format they would like the information. How could we submit that to them? What is there some format that they would like? Is there, what it is? My only hesitation with the survey that Rich is talking about, and absolutely no offense to you, Rich, whatsoever, but my experience with surveys is that if you don't then immediately take action after the survey, you piss people off more than when you started. So you have to be very careful about what questions you ask and what feedback you get, and then they have to be actionable or you're going to be in trouble. So some of the things on that new list that they gave you might be wonderful things to do a survey about, because those are things we can affect and that we can make a decision on. But some of this other stuff that we can't really affect, I don't know that you really want to ask that question.
Well, I think that's a fair point. It's also true that during the earlier project, hundreds of people responded to surveys. And they're in.
Oh, no, they'll respond, but then.
No.
Yeah.
What I mean is,
That's
been
got
there,
it.
and it informed and adjusted
Correct.
what the final product
Correct.
was.
Yeah.
So that's all. But
Yeah.
Jim, you were going to say?
Well, what happened?
You've got Rich's hand up here.
Oh, sorry.
When you're ready.
Yeah. Rich?
Go ahead.
You're on mute, Rich.
You're muted.
Thank you. Just a brief reply regarding survey research. I spent 14 years at Western working on survey research. I think I understand a fair amount about how that's done. I was a major player in the survey that we did back in the early 2000s about the sub-area planning process, which ran into a lot of trouble. So going back to the topic that's on the floor, I feel pretty confident that despite the fact that, as Mike has often said, both Mikes, this is an argument surrounded by water. I think that at the end of the day, the right boat is the one that actually delivers the most net benefits to the population of the island. And it's appropriate for us to check in from time to time about what their values are and what their needs are and what's important to them.
But Rich, one thing to mention is that the needs of the island that we would survey today don't necessarily reflect the needs of the island in the future. And there's really no way.
Okay, so in response to that, Judy, I will say, if you look closely at the KPFF study, the entire rationale for this vote is based on the fact that according to projections of a company in New York State that did the demographic study, which, because as we know, all demographic studies about the future are now moot because the future isn't going to be like anything like the past for a whole bunch of reasons. It's entirely appropriate to keep, as Mike has been pointing out, to stay current. We need to stay current with the reality around us. We need to stay current with what's getting more expensive and less expensive, what's happening to our population and demographics, how our ferry choices affect those demographics, et cetera, et cetera. So I still would like to involve more of the public. Thank you.
I think you
Mike,
made good points, but there's an assumption in there that people who are overseeing all this and have made decisions based on our input are not concerned about that, and I think they are. I think they're very committed to and concerned about having the right vehicle for this island ultimately.
Jim, I'd like to.
Okay, the Washington chief was the right vote for 1962, probably about 1990 when we started changing the Coast Guard regulations. It worked fine. It continued to really actually work fine, but it's now floating on a river of money. It's as far as being economically viable, it's long overdue. We're looking at, if you look back, I have no problem personally having gone through the process of the level of service and everything. I don't think it's that bad. I think if you wanted to open a real can of worms, that would be the one to open. And I don't think, maybe some adjustments could be made, but generally the process, I thought that consultants actually did that part of it fairly well. What they fell down on was the hardware. And that's where, what I'm speaking about. You know, we got lucky in 1962 with the Washington chief. We got a very efficient boat. It's still an efficient boat. It's just too small, too old, not meeting regulations, you name it. The list goes on and on. It's time to be, it's past time to be replaced. And what we need to do is we need to get one that is at least as good for today that that one was for 1962.
I'd like to recognize Todd Legacy. You've got your hand up. And you need to unmute.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I just wanted to point out another component of things we should be considering are issues related around climate change and around carbon emissions, because the Whatcom Chief is the largest single carbon emitter in Whatcom County in the government, and that needs to be considered as we move forward. And I'm sure that that's one of the reasons for the hybrid model. But then also we need to look at the responsibility to the entire county as far as the level of service that we can afford and what makes the most sense monetarily for the best benefit for both islanders and taxpayers in the county. So I didn't hear those issues being addressed, and I just wanted to make sure that we're also looking at that too. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Rich Fry.
think his hand up was.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
Is it say that?
oh, okay.
Okay, Todd.
Your question for me?
Carbon emission is directly related to how much fuel the vessel burns. And we do not have the electrical infrastructure at this time. And until we get it, we're gonna be burning diesel oil. Unless somebody wants to put a wood fire or something else in. I don't think so. Hydrogen is coming, but it's not here yet. We need something now. And so my thing is to burn the least amount of diesel oil we can for the biggest amount of bucks. And that's where we're sitting. I just hope with Nikola Tesla free energy happens tomorrow, I would kiss the ground if that happened, but we're not seeing it yet. And so that's why I consider looking at the diesel option to be the best we can. Yes, the engines are better than they used to be. And so that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, I'd like to go back to Rich Fry. I'm sorry for the back and forth there. It looked like you had something to say.
I'm good.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead, Judy.
Great, thanks. I just want to say that in a way, it's kind of nice that we were missing some other parts of our agenda tonight because it has given us the opportunity to spend more time hashing this out, which I think has been needed. And I think this conversation has been great. I think it might be time to wind it up. And what I am hearing from this conversation is that it seems valid to go back to request Public Works go back and that we open the files for the design and the level of service. I'm not talking about rewriting anything. I'm just talking about asking the folks that created those plans, two different folks, Elliott Bay and KPFF, to do a review in light of the number of years that have passed since they did them. And just to see if there's any highlights there that they think need to have some time spent to review in light of the current situation of how much has changed. If it has been 4 years, let's face it, a lot has changed. But having said that, I absolutely agree that we are on a timeline and we absolutely can't veer off this timeline. We can't go back and start from scratch. That is absolutely off the table. But I do think that, you know, opening those files and looking for any red flags that might be worth reassessing is valid.
Yeah, good points, Judy. There's one knot in there, though. It's been hammered in, at least in my conversations, that the original amount of money to be spent is now way in excess of that and is approaching $750,000 to get here. And the county doesn't have and is not willing to commit much more money to consultants. So I loved what you said earlier about what you guys accomplished and all the things we can accomplish that don't involve or cost more money. And I'm not, that's just a fact. That's just a hard fact of life. Is that it's going to be like pulling teeth to go spend any more money on consultants.
Well, just a brief remark, and then I want to go to Rich Fry, who has his hand up.
No, I think he just hasn't taken it down. Rich, you got to hover over the bottom and and then lower hand, unless you really want your hand up.
Okay, well.
Actually, I did have my hand up, but it's so long ago, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, Rich, you
I'll be
have
back.
to say now.
Go ahead and lower it then if you don't
I'll be
have-
back.
All right, Chris, what were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good point. I do think there's a preliminary question to it, and which is, I know that there was significant updating for the raised grant application from the original conceptual design. I don't know the details of it, but I know costs were looked at. They were adjusted to reflect the passing of time and different kinds of costs. So that may be a preliminary question for us to ask. But,
Yeah, good point. Good point.
But that point it seems to make sense. We are drawing toward the end of the meeting. We have a little more time. According to my little kitchen timer. I think the other thing that's come up is, the Plan B question, and it seems perfectly reasonable for the committee to ask for some kind of a statement or position about, what's the next step if raise doesn't come through, or crab doesn't come through. There's been some back and forth with the crab board about that. So those are both of those areas make perfect sense. A review of the design LOS and the Plan B question. And I'm just thinking, and this isn't an action item, and I'm not asking for a vote, but I want to get a sense of the group. Maybe we can look at putting those two subjects or topics on the August action items agenda. Does that make sense to anyone else?
So the two items are number one, review design and level of service plan, and the second one being, what is Plan B?
Yeah. And if any of the funds we seek or the county seeks don't come through or come through differently. Rich, do you have your hand up?
I do, and interestingly, I was going to make something like that same point, which is that Mike has pointed out that we can expect to hear something about the RAISE grant in the next several weeks, and that's a really big deal, and how that goes is going to have a big effect on our entire discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and we have our meeting is.
So agreed.
Our meeting is on the 10th, and the announcement supposedly on the 12th.
Hey, Michael's still on? Mike, are you still there? His name's on the screen.
Yeah.
Where did you get that date? I'm just curious because that decision wasn't made last year until in late fall. So I'm really interested in that because there's.
I just got unmuted. You can go to the Department of Transportation RAISE grants and you can see the award announcement as August 12th or before.
Thank you.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I'd like to do one thing. I'd like to do a little presentation on the hull design and some other stuff. The thing is that I am a terrible artist. I am not CAD competent. If anybody would like to help me do that, and show you why things work in the way they work, I really appreciate that. And I'd be glad to work on that.
Well, despite what you say, your drawing on the whiteboard at Public Works made perfect sense to Liz and Rich. So, but if somebody, but that,
Jim, I'm for that if you make that an optional thing aside from this meeting. I don't want to spend any time.
Oh, it would be fairly quick. It'd be fairly quick.
we have a place for it on next month's agenda. Or we can ask for a presentation on that subject and give it a timeline from Jim.
Yeah.
If he wants us, I'm just saying, we have some opportunities, but we have a place. As folks may have noticed, we've done some adjustment to the agenda format. and there's a more clear place if we want to do that.
What's the end game? What's the purpose?
I would say it's just education.
Okay.
We don't have to decide tonight.
Yeah.
Rich, your hand is still up, or is it just staying up?
It's just staying there.
I have no idea why it's still up. Is there a way to put it down?
Yeah. Hover and lower.
Yeah, anyway, I'm good. Thanks.
And Judy, did you have anything else to add? You were in a green box.
She just talked.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm glad that we have had this conversation tonight.
Just had 30 seconds since I started this conversation, unfortunately. I was not trying to infer or say directly that we should do a redo. And I want to make sure that's clear, because all these conversations, every time somebody started saying redo, it seemed like it was looking at me. Maybe it was a screen.
No,
But-
no,
but I
it's
just wanna
not
make-
just you.
No, but I have continued as far as like thinking what the action plan is, you know, how this committee makes recommendations to the county. I totally agree with the Friends First approach. We get a lot more done that way. But there are things like the education, the whole things and other things. It seems like there's got to be something coming out of this committee and headed that way to someone. And that's, as a community member, what I'd like to see instead of just education. I mean,
Well,
you know,
well, maybe offline, there's been a whole lot of thought out.
no, that's great.
And
But-
we've been in Zoom for 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
Because I think that the distinction, as I see it, is what can we control, what can we influence, and how can we best use our ability to influence to get the changes made that possibly need to be made, and to keep everything on track. And those are the, somewhat harder conversations sometimes.
well, and some of the harder ones are how much of getting behind some of these desired changes is the business of the community.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Let's see, so I'm gonna come to the end of things. I think that there's some stuff to plan for next meeting, and there's some questions for public work folks. Let's see, on the introduction of future discussion, presentation, and action items, this came about from Bill's report from LIFAC. Do you want to?
Yeah, Leica noticed that, the Wacom Chiefs turned 60 years old, and no one was celebrating it. And it's so near and dear to us. The Leica folks said, well, let's go ahead and plan something. So an event is actually going to take place on Sunday, the 21st of August. It is going to be held within Orchard Park, so right within the ferry parking lot. Starting roughly at around 2:30 to 2:30, and continue for a couple hours. There's going to be food, music, and a few speakers. Coming from Leica, I wanted to really invite everybody here to come celebrate with the community. And I was going to offer someone from Leica, I was going to ask, as the details will become much fresher next month, if we could have a short presentation from either the president of Leica or the vice president, who would be able to give you, just 5 minutes, outline what's going on, just so we can make sure that y'all participate as well as Public Works. Hopefully we'll have some more folks, but they can even see the remote. We're trying to get the invitations out to everybody that is so near and dear to keeping the ferry going and celebrating where it's been. So.
I just think that sounds great. And so I put that on here on the updated version, and we'll plan on.
Okay, yeah,
requesting.
and I won't be here, but Greg or Alan will actually.
And I just had other notes. And so Mary, this is something we mentioned and Mike maybe can show you, but the tone deadline is this Friday. There's usually some little blurb. Reed was doing those under Mike's guidance, kind of, and that seemed to work well.
Hey, Chris.
Yes,
Though, yeah, that didn't always necessarily fall to secretary, and Mary, I'd be happy to spearhead the tome.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, and maybe put something together and then get some feedback from other folks, because I think
good.
I think it's really important. And we've missed a couple of those, so.
Yeah, and that's right, a good reminder.
I mean-
We took it on and kind of got it going and maintained for a little while.
So in that realm, I'd also suggest, along with the tome, there is a calendar that should be updated on the LIFAC's website that's made for all of Lummi Island community, as well as then anything goes in tome could also be a whole page to what's going on with the LIFAC committee and communication. So it's outside of what county would provide, maybe pointing back at the links, but it's certainly part of that community outreach that I think.
Yeah, well, you've been talking about that, and it seems like there's a range of development.
Yeah, I mean, it almost comes up as simple as the LIFAC meeting, it's scheduled, it's coming up. I even wonder whether to throw it out on next door or not, right? So y'all coming up with direction as to what you want would certainly be helpful. I mean, I think, I know you guys want to embrace and have your community outreach. And it's just how to do that in today's world. So.
Well, we talked about that at the May meeting some, and that's one of those things that seems on the development list, that there's all kinds of opportunity. So I guess I'd like to just wrap up with the comment that it feels to me as though we're kind of restarting. Because even though everybody kept up with the Zoom meetings over the last couple of years, and even though I was on the gap year, I attended as many as I could last year. But that's a whole different, medium and way to work on this stuff. Now we're trying to put pieces back together. Things have changed. We have new expectations. Community has new expectations, but there's just a world of opportunity to kind of get restarted and do more really good work that leads in a direction that we've already kind of outlined. And I can just tell you that we have real partners at Public Works for that.
Sounds like that.
And even though it isn't all out in front, there has been ongoing and growing effort in that direction. So with that, would anyone care to move for adjournment?
I call the motion.
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot, all participants.
Bill, thanks.
Thank you, Bill, for your work tonight, and welcome, Mary. I really appreciate, and all of you. Thank you, everyone.